This is the Bold City Podcast.
Hey, welcome to the Bold City Podcast. I am Jason Masters, the lead pastor of Bold City Church. And listen, today you're in for a treat. I want to welcome you to my guest, my friend, Brian Carroll. What's up, man?
What's up? Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here, and let's have a little bit of fun today. And we go back 20 years, not quite as far back as you and Adam Driggers and Jamie Driggers go, but I actually met you from the Driggers around 2002, maybe.
Yep.
And you were in an interesting point in your life too, because you were working your way into football and you were training out there with us. So you got to see a different side of me that not everyone got to see at that time. And we could talk about that. And, training in the environment we did forever, you had to have a certain attitude to lift the weights we did. So it was a little bit of a character that I would play at times. And so we could talk about that. But anyway, it's great to be here. Known you for 20 years. So looking forward to it. Yeah,
we don't have to spend a lot of time on that. I don't want to tell people how awesome you were back then. God's did an incredible work. But man, I'm glad you took the time. I do know this though. I have known you a long time, but I've watched firsthand over the past 7 or 8 years, God do some pretty significant stuff in you and your family. And so I'm excited to kind of talk through that. And it's obvious that, we've worked out together a lot. I'm just kidding. I haven't been able to keep up with you, but we have been working out a lot spiritually lately. So that's awesome. Before we get rolling into that, I want to remind people of a few things. If they want to connect with the church, they can go to boldcity.church, because we have no idea when people might watch this. Might be years down the road.
Right.
If they like what they're seeing here, if they're enjoying this, we want to invite them to like and subscribe. And as well as if anybody gleans anything from your testimony, it's my hope and prayer that they'll share this thing with people. Would you like to let people know that if they personally want to connect with you, where they can do that at?
Yeah, you're welcome to email me at brian@powerrackstrength.com, POWERRACKSTRENGTH.com, or social's easy, Brian Carroll 1306. You can find me in 1306, of course. 2 years ago, as the first person to squat over 1,300 pounds. So am I humble bragging a little bit in my handles? Yes.
Well, that's quite the feat. It's pretty incredible, actually. So, man, let's start with this. Man, kind of tell us, I already know it, but tell us, man, kind of your faith background, how you grew up and how you come to following Jesus.
So I grew up in a Christian home, went to church 3 times a week. And I remember in 7th grade, I got scared into getting saved. Now, I was a believer. I was just not living it. 7th grade, kind of a jerk, and got in a lot of trouble at school. So I was a believer, but I wasn't living it. And I went with my dad to a play, or not a play, but Heaven Gates and Hell's Flames.
Yeah.
What would you call that? Is that a play?
It's like a walk-through play thing. It depends. Some of them you walk through, some of them you watch.
Right. And then they, the long story short, the end, people aren't going to heaven, and it scared me because I knew I wasn't living right. So that was a time when I really started putting the right foot forward. But then, of course, there were times when I kind of go back and forth. But that was definitely a turning point in my life in 7th grade when I got scared straight, basically. And so you still need, in my opinion, you need more than that to be, a true believer as you grow and you start living life and things pull you in different directions. But that was the start. I went to church then. I was a pretty good kid, but I wasn't truly living it for a long time. And that was for a lot of reasons, probably because it was kind of forced upon me as a kid. And so you naturally rebel against that, right? And just not thinking that I needed it at times. So was I going to heaven? Did I believe Christ was the Messiah? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Was I living for him? No. Sometimes a little bit, most of the time, just no. So I did things my way for a long time. I competed in powerlifting for over 20 years, and that was my life. That's all I thought about for a long time. It's all I wanted. It's all that really mattered to me. And you realize after a certain amount of time, there's more to life than just competing or sports or lifting weights, right? So there came a point in my life about 2018, and some things happened with my lifting, and I was kind of at a turning point because my wife wanted to have kids. I wanted to have kids, but I wasn't doing all the things in my power to make sure that happened. Now, it might shock some of you seeing me out there in video land on YouTube and whatnot, but I've probably used some performance enhancing substances that can lead to your infertility. So during this time, when I say I wasn't doing everything I could on my end, I was still taking things and not getting things right on my end to get a pregnancy. So to summarize, I got kind of beat up with some things, and I just kind of broke and said, fine, you know what? I'm going to take a break from lifting, which was very hard to do.
Yep.
Take a break from lifting. And I went to the doctor to get a sperm analysis, and I had 0 sperm, 0. I wasn't too surprised because I've been taking things for a while. So I kind of had, some time with God and just said, I'm going to trust you. The doctor doesn't think that it will come back. There's a good chance it won't. But I'm going to trust you, and I'm going to go about this with some experts and such that I know. And I'm just going to kind of go in this and trust you in the process. So that's January of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've been trying for 5 years. So people came into my life just randomly and would just, people talk about when you align yourself and you're giving and your heart's right, blessings will come looking for you. And after a period of time of me not taking any supplements, kind of just, actually at one point I was going to go see a specialist, an internal medicine specialist. And I just felt God just tell me, you don't need to go or don't go. I just didn't have peace about going. Now, sometimes not having peace about something could be you not wanting to do something you need to do that's going to be a pain.
Yep.
Other times it's a warning that you don't need to do that. So I took it as a warning you don't need to do that, and I just blew off the appointment. I canceled it, and I just did things on my own with my own research and meeting a couple of people that helped me out a little bit, because if you look at how to restore fertility, you're going to hear 15 different ways from 15 different doctors. So I trusted God that he would lead me in ways to be able to fix it. So fast forward a few months, I'm sitting on my porch and I'm with my wife, and I get a call from someone I haven't talked to in years. They said, "What are you doing tomorrow?" I don't know. Well, why don't you come down to Miami? We just opened a clinic and we want you to be one of our first sponsored athletes. We want you to come down. And I said, well, it's crazy you say this. We are working on having a baby now and we're not having success. So as I said, the blessings come looking for you. They called me less than 12 hours later. I was in Miami getting blood work done. No cost to me whatsoever for any of my supplements. And fast forward, that was May. In August of 2019, we had a positive pregnancy. And to boot, we had twins. And so we went from 5 years of trying, no success, to me getting straight with God and just surrendering to him. And he just guided my path. And it was really, people say, coming off supplements, taking them for so long, you need testosterone. How hard was it? The doctor warned me, it's going to be so hard. It really wasn't that hard. Once you make your mind up to do something, and if it's God's will and you're living right, I'm not going to say things are going to be easy, but it was not nearly as hard as I expected it to be. Not to mention getting away from my hobby and not competing during this time. But the spiritual growth I had during this time was just off the charts for me. I grew so much during this time. I realized I didn't need powerlifting in my life. I realized it didn't need to be my identity.
Yeah.
And that's something that I realized. So we have 2 girls that are 2.5. They're not identical twins. One looks just like my wife, Rhea. One looks just like me. And things are much better because I took the time and God kind of pulled me aside and said, you need to stop, stay still for a little bit. Here's what I need you to do, a holding pattern. You have to trust me. And because I was obedient and I got past, what is it that leads most people astray that you think Christians deal with, secular people deal with? For me, it's fear. Fear is like the catalyst and the cause of so many things, so many bad decisions we make, because fear of the unknown, fear of being embarrassed, fear of failing, fear of being looked at weird. So for me, it was fear of failing, not getting the pregnancy, fear of missing out on powerlifting. But that was my mantra going forward. There's 250 or more verses in the Bible that deal with fear. Man, fear not. And that's my mantra going forward. Don't be afraid. And I was afraid of a lot of things. And that was holding me back in my relationship with God and my growth as a person, as a businessman, as a husband, as a father. And so getting fear the heck out of my life and not succumbing to it.
Yeah, wow. That's incredible. That's incredible. You just gave a lot of good stuff in a short amount of time. Man, I think one of the big things that sticks out to me is, first off, we grew up in a culture where that scare tactic, there's a lot more reasons.
Fear.
Yeah, there's a lot more reasons to come to Jesus besides just being scared of eternity apart from him. That should, when you believe, that should be scary. But man, there's a lot of good reasons to walk with him every single day, right?
Yep.
And you're learning that over the process of time from a seventh grade boy to a grown man who's a business owner, a husband, and a father. 2018 was pretty difficult yet remarkable season for you.
Yep.
God does a bunch of good stuff in difficult seasons. I think people need to hear that and remember that, learning to embrace the difficult, not that you're going to dwell there forever, but God does some of his best work in that. And that's hard work time, because you got to face the music of, man, I like to control things, right? Even powerlifting, you powerlift because you control things, and you a lot of times your outcome depends on you. And sometimes some teammates that are good or bad. But anyway, that's a whole nother podcast. But seeing you like face that stuff, man, is incredible. Especially when the common narrative is this probably won't work, because you've trained your body to operate a certain way for so long, and doctors are telling you, man, it's probably not going to get back to where it should be.
Right.
And so I imagine that was pretty scary. Tell me what it's like to over-identify in a hobby that it was a hobby, but it really was a career too. And then to re-identify in Christ, to lose that. Because, I'll be honest, that's how I met you. I just knew Brian's really flipping strong. And that, my whole life of knowing you as majority of the time until, past 7 years or so has revolved around plates and weights, you know? And so what's it like to re-identify yourself outside of that?
It's kind of relieving, because for the longest time, that's how I identified myself, as the top lifter in the world. That's all I thought about. And so when God did his work in me, 2018 and 19, he had to stop me. And then I listened, and then things started turning around for me. So when we got pregnant in 2019, I had like a sit down with God here at the chapel. Mm-hmm. And I remember laying on the floor and talking to God and saying, I just want a little bit more. I just want a little bit more lifting. I want a little bit more, another record or something else that I can be happy with. And I know that's a silly thing to say, because that's like what a kid would say, But nonetheless, I wanted to go out with one more thing I'd be excited about, that I can walk away and just be good. And I heard clearly, you're done. And I pushed back. I said, I want one more thing, God, just one more thing. And I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear a no, didn't hear a yes. We got pregnant. I started back to lifting and everything. And what I did is I included the Lord in everything that I did, in my lifting and the music that I listened to. And that's another topic too. I changed the music that I listen to in the gym. Do I still listen to some rock music that's not uplifting at times? Yes, but some of the music I listened to was so overtly evil that I just couldn't reconcile the fact that I'm a believer and openly a believer. And I would listen to this type of content. And the other people that would listen or be there with me listening to this type of content, that's me agreeing with it.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Especially your gym, your house,
Yep. And I did for so long, so that was a thing to change. But I brought Christ in with everything that I do. I spoke to him about it. I got counsel from him about how to approach lifting. And I just noticed that it was not perfect, but it was just so much easier, less anxiety, less toiling, less pushing all the time. And I remember when I pushed for my last squat in 2020, I told God, Let me do this one last thing and I will be done. I believe he was with me that day for me to be able to lift that much weight. And I kept my promise. I squatted 1,300 pounds. Haven't even considered competing again. And I've dedicated my life since to helping as many people as possible, not just deal with back pain, but become better lifters. I mentor a lot of people. I consult a lot of people. So that's how I can live vicariously through other people now. But I'm trying to get small now. I'm trying to be under the radar more. And so if that would have been the case before, with my identity being so strongly tied to my lifting, I may have been one of those Junior Seau people that once it's done, what is there? There's no adrenaline rush next. People aren't looking to talk to you. You're not a popular dude anymore. I don't care about any of that. What I focus now on is my relationship with Christ, my family, and my close friends around me, and my excuse me, and my health. My health now. My health was never on the forefront. It was always on the back burner. That's something God brought my attention to. My health, not just my fertility, but my overall health. So I'm focused on that more now because for the longest time, I didn't care about living to 40. I didn't think I'd live to 40. Why? All I want to do is lift big weights, and when that's done, there's nothing else to live for anyway. It's a very silly way to go about it, but I bet a lot of people out there in their 20s have had that same mindset too.
Yeah, with some. Yeah.
Yep.
Once I hit this big mountain, this big accomplishment, what else is there?
Yep.
And there is more,
A lot
especially
more.
when you become a father.
Right. There's a lot more.
Yeah.
All that stuff is just so silly to me now.
Yeah. Hey, let's talk to there's a couple things. One, we don't have to do this in this order. Again, like I don't overscript these things. I just sit and have conversations with friends and people that I believe in and I believe in what God's doing in their life. I want to talk a little bit more about how God is using you and your platform. But two, man, let's talk through some of those difficulties that you've been through. Because I know you've had massive depression battles and things like that because of injuries and stuff like that. Can we talk kind of through that and then how God used your injury to actually expand your platform and to give you really a whole different angle? Because when you started lifting, the goal's always been to be one of the strongest dudes on the planet. But then in the middle of that, you completely destroyed your body for a while, and God restored it, gave you some, blessed you with some incredible people around you, and you're able to learn to maybe lift things the right way.
Yep.
You know, can we talk a little bit about that and then how God's using your platform?
Yep. So in 2009, I was going to be a cop. I thought I had my whole life figured out, and I actually got hurt on the obstacle course in Jack's Beach, and I fell right on my butt. Morning dew was all over this barricade I was jumping over, and I was 270 and pretty fast. I slipped, landed on my butt, and I actually broke my back. I didn't know it. So I continued competing, and then eventually over time, I just regressed in my lifting ability. I started having severe back pain. Anyway, when lifting is your only outlet and it starts becoming one of those things that it could be taken away from you, it becomes painful, it spills over in your daily life, you become a jerk around the house, you don't respect people because all you think about is your pain. I got to a point where I couldn't lift without pain anymore, and I got really depressed. I talked to surgeons and doctors, and of course, there's some good doctors out there, there's some not so good ones, and they generally didn't have an answer for me. It was either stop lifting weights or you're screwed anyway. So I was like, that's not good enough. So there were points that I was really struggling, like mentally with like, what do I want to do? If this is really done, do I want to live anymore? And every time a thought would come like that through my mind, I'd be like, that's way too drastic.
Yeah.
At least I was rational enough in my frame of mind to know that that's not an answer. That's just a reaction. You know what I mean? Let's settle down a little bit. So, God knew what I needed, and one of my clients knew that I was struggling with my back, and I tried everything. He goes, there's this guy named Dr. McGill up in Canada. He will be able to fix you. And I'd heard of him before. Nonetheless, I sent him an email, and within 2 weeks or so, I was up there in Canada. And I had to completely reframe my mindset because, I'm a type A personality. I always handled my training, always did my nutrition. I did all these things. But I knew the way I'd been doing things for so long didn't work. So I had to go up to Canada that day as a complete beginner, as if I knew nothing about lifting, the back, powerlifting, and that's what saved me. Going up there humble and learning from Dr. McGill. And Dr. McGill is the best low back specialist in the world, world renowned. And after we spent 4 or 5 hours together, Dr. McGill looked at me and said, well, you want the good news or bad news? I said, well, give me the good news. He goes, I can get you out of pain. I can show you how to get out of pain. The bad news is you're done. This is 2013. You're done lifting. And if you were my son, I would urge you to retire because further damage to the tissue that you have in your back could lead to catastrophic injury or worse. And because I had some flattened discs, I had a split sacrum, so I had a lot of stuff going on in my back. And it wasn't just going on in my back, it was down my foot and my ankle and all the neural stuff that goes with that. And so I stopped him there and I said, well, you said you can get me out of pain. Just know I get out of pain, I'm getting back to lifting again. And we went back and forth and he goes, okay, fine. You get out of pain and then we'll talk about lifting. And who knows, maybe you're right. Maybe we end up writing a book about it. And I held him to the fire. I came back. I lifted more weight than ever. And then about 4 years later, after our first meeting, we wrote a book and it's called Gift of Injury. And it's the story of my path and his path intersecting, us meeting and what we did to fix my back. Yep. Then we used the tenets of his back book, Back Mechanic, and how anyone can get pain-free and get back to doing the things they want to do with these certain steps. And of course, each injury is unique. You got to remove the cause of it. You got to rebuild slowly. And so that's how Dr. McGill and I met. And I've been able to use my platform to help other people. Before I got hurt, I coached other people, but I didn't help people as much as I do now.
Right.
So now I help lay people in the UFC, VIP people all over the world with their back and get them back to lifting or being able to pick up their kid out of the crib again or just walk or have sex with their wife, And these are things that I focus on now, and that's a good enough identity for me. And I believe it's fully what my calling is to help people. I can't help everybody. And, it's interesting because some people, I would get kind of mad at God. Why won't you just heal me? Sometimes he absolutely said Sunday. Sometimes he heals you. A lot of the time, he'll give you a shovel to dig the hole, or he'll bring people across your life to help you, And I wanted him just to heal me, but I'm so thankful that he just didn't heal me in my sleep. Yeah. Because most likely I would have went back to doing the same exact things that I was before and didn't learn how to lift better and to move better and invest in my body. And now I'm able to instill these principles and these approaches in people all over the world and help thousands of people that I would never have been able to reach if I didn't have to go through this myself.
Yeah. So the gift of injury, right? Let's over spiritualize that for a second. Like, let's talk about healing. Like, we obviously know, we read it all through scripture. We see Jesus doing it often, instant with a touch. People are miraculously healed.
Right.
We see processes of healing within, like Naaman had to go dip himself multiple times in the river. Like you see processes and you see instantaneous. We live in an instant culture that wants everything now. But like you said too, though, I think we kind of, when we get the instant stuff, we often seem to revert back to, the stuff that got us in that position. And there's things that we battle, not yours is about a back injury, but also like the mental side, the stress of, man, there's an injury. My wife and I, we want to do what God's called us to do. We want to have a family. We're not able to have a family doing things the way that we are. The thing about, like, let's just say a supernatural injury and God's process of healing, the thing that I love about it, it requires that we stay close to Jesus, which in turn is often seen. We see that as like, man, this is probably the most spiritual season of my life. It might be the most difficult, but I'm not trusting me. I'm not trusting my process. I'm having to trust Jesus in this. And when you walk through it, like when you make it through that, it does change you. It completely changes you. For you, we're talking about something natural. It changed the way that you did things naturally. It also impacted you supernaturally. But for a second, if I could just put my pastor cap on, like when you walk through injuries, difficulties, hard times with Jesus, and you get to the end of those, dude, you're usually marked and different forever. And so then how you do, because you were leading people before the injury and you were leading people after it. And I think you would agree with me, no doubt you're leading people in a much greater way now than you ever did before then because of that season and not just because of what the process you went through to learn to heal, but the spiritual maturity of learning how to lean on God in that.
And learning patience. That's so hard to wait, and not do anything. Sometimes, when you've exhausted all your measures that you can do yourself, then you just got to be patient and wait. But then I think a lot of the time, on the other side, people haven't done anything on their own and are just waiting for God to just perform a miracle for them when he wants to work through you and co-labor with you. Mm-hmm. And they're just waiting. Meanwhile, the door is waiting for them to walk through, but they're just waiting for, a magical cure to come by with, for lack of a better way of putting it. And like we said, it absolutely does happen. But I think there's a lot of power in people going through things and being able to walk through it with them because they've been there themselves. And the experience that I had, the mental, the physical, like everything, I can speak with people and have complete empathy and understand what they're going through.
Yeah. Someone
that hasn't went through a severe back injury, they can have empathy, they can relate to a certain extent, but they don't truly know what it's like.
Yeah.
Yep.
A lot of people don't understand the mental side of an injury like that either.
And it robbing your joy.
Yeah. And your peace too, man.
Yep.
You talked about a lot of people just sitting and waiting, but not doing while they're waiting. I just don't think faith is stagnant. Even when Jesus miraculously healed people in a moment, he would tell them, get up, take your mat. Like there was some kind of response there's, we see the greatest miracles happen when the natural and the supernatural collide, and there is, God gets all the glory and the credit, but there is a portion of ownership within the miracle of, hey, you got to respond. Like you got to respond to what God's doing in some capacity. That's probably one of my favorite things about your story is like you could have very easily got healed up, God doing all these miraculous things, and you just said, hey, I'm just going to continue to be focused on me, lifting me.
I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah. But you haven't. It's been really cool to kind of watch how God's navigated you. If I could just be 100% honest, like you're rigid. When I first met you, I was like, hey, Brian's this tough dude who didn't have a lot of grace for people. It's really cool. You and we'll be helping the same people sometimes, and we'll have a conversation about how we're trying to help them. It's really cool to see the softening work that God's did in your life.
Yeah, and it was kind of like a pessimistic approach too, like pessimistic. Not thinking people are serious when they train or who's this guy. Just the attitude that you have as a young the attitude that you have as a younger kid. Then you realize that number one, that's just not. It's not very godly. I mean, we all like to play around and joke, and especially you, me, and Adam. We love to bust balls, but also there's a time where you got to, I think you've said it yourself, like there's a little bit of truth in the sarcasm you use sometimes, and you can sting people with it and just kind of smile and keep it light. But I think it's important to show people that you love them and tell them also.
Yeah, if there's something I've learned in the past 10 years, it's just the power within the words, man, even in a joking manner, and there is a level like, if also it's the proximity, the closeness of the relationship. Like if I go over and work out with you now and you make a joke about something, I'm probably not going to take it the way maybe I would 15 years ago or, 12 years ago or something, because I know your heart. I know I know that you actually care too, but for me, like if somebody asked me, hey, what was Brian like at 2002, 3, or 4? I'd be like, I don't know if he'd ever be like this soft dude. Who would have thought you'd ever be a dad of twins? If you ever just be helping people just because they need help, not because it's some financial gain for you. There's often a lot of times you just help people because you're like, hey, they need help. But then to watch too, like you and Rhea's growth as a
Yep.
couple and how well you love your wife and stuff. All that's really cool to watch how, God just transforms a man. And the good news is, like, he's not done.
No, that's about to say I still got some work to do. A lot of work to do.
Yeah.
You know.
But being patient just every day.
Yep. And
Every day.
bold men, there were some things that came at me just out of nowhere. And I know that we talked about this at the beginning when a few people were having things going on in their life in the first couple months. And I just kind of made a mental note, like, I'll just be ready, and just some bizarre things would happen. And I would feel myself start getting pulled in former ways of approaching situations. And I had to check myself. And I struggled.
Yeah.
I struggled at times with this stuff. And just wanting to unleash on people and lash them. They may deserve it, but you're not going to feel good after that. Then you're going to make a mess of things. Even if they seemingly deserve a talking to, that's not always the right way to go about it. So I found myself at times resorting back to some old tactics. And so, yeah, I came out the Bold Men group a lot better, spending time in the Word every day. And one thing that helped me, I was so used to getting on my computer every morning, whether it be my phone to read the daily devotion.
Yep.
So I kind of got stagnant after a little bit when it stopped because, I'm used to opening my phone and getting the devotion. Well, now what I did is I open up my computer every morning and I write. I love to write. So instead of praying and let my mind wander, dude, I just write to God in my Google Drive every day. And then it's like a journal too.
Yep.
Because you won't be able to read my handwriting.
Yeah.
So if I die in a couple of years, my wife wants to read my journal. She's like, what is this? Did a monkey write this?
Like me, yeah.
Yeah. So, but then it's at least legible and I can go back and look, okay, October 2nd of 2022, this happened and I was dealing with this, but this was the breakthrough.
Yeah.
And another thing that God has really dealt with me about is generosity and giving even when you don't want to. And everything inside of you is saying, don't do it. Don't hold on to that $300. You might need it. Whenever I feel that, I know I need to give it. Yeah. And there's been people, and it's weird because you approach people sometimes and they're just laid on your heart. Give them what's in your wallet. What? You pull it out, you have like $42 in there. Give it to them. Tell them to take their wife out to lunch. Maybe it was $100 or something.
Yeah.
They come back and say, you know what? I didn't want to take that from you. My dinner came to exactly $102 that night, exactly with the tip and everything. And I was obedient because we had prayer for people that were struggling in their marriage at the beginning of Bold Men.
Yep.
And I felt clear as day, empty your wallet out to that guy over there that went up to get prayed for. Tell him to take his wife out on a date. And I didn't want to do it. He didn't want to accept it.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to take no for an answer because I knew what I heard. And it wasn't just about him robbing me of my blessing. It was about obedience.
That's right.
Take it. He took it, took his wife out, and whatever happened from there is not my problem or my fault or be obedient, and that's it. Leave it alone. Sometimes you might be prompted to follow up, but just be obedient, be generous. It always comes back to you.
Yeah. And let me expand a little bit on the Bold Men. Some people might be listening, might not have any idea. We all agreed. I say we all, it's over 80 of us at the beginning of the year. We said, hey, we're going to take 8 months when we're going to give ourselves away to being in the Word every single day, man, to doing some homework lessons, reading 3 different books, these 8 different teachings where we walk through these 8 teachings that did high accountability. It was like deep discipleship. And I believe that was really a catalyst for me this year to process through some things, some internal struggles that I had. It brought some things to the surface, man, which just caused me to address some things, even how I lead within our church and stuff like that. And I would strongly encourage, whether there's somebody that doesn't come to our church, no matter how many years after we actually record this they're watching, I would strongly encourage men to get with other men and really go after Jesus together. There's another pastor watching this, man. I would encourage them not just to put his people to it, but to go to it with them. And I think it gave me a group of men. In the middle of it is the one out of the 8 lessons that I couldn't teach was the baptize in fire, right? And it was because I was in the middle of the fire because of the process that at the beginning of the year, I was like, this is going to be awesome for guys to walk through it. And really it was like, it wasn't awesome. It was hard.
Yep.
But it was on this side of it, it's awesome now. And I'm glad that I didn't try to put people through it and not go through it myself, you know? And so to hear that other men, and I know it's true, I've got some testimony, other men were greatly impacted in whatever way they needed to be by it, was a big deal. But I encourage people to do it. In fact, we're trying to turn that into a workbook format and stuff like that. Because one thing, I don't necessarily know that I could give it another 8 straight months because it's really time consuming.
Yep.
It wasn't easy.
Yep.
But they're not going to get any sympathy from someone like you because you always into doing stuff hard. You like that's just kind of how you are. You're wired that way. You don't shy away from the difficult stuff.
I enjoyed it. And I think it's important we have community at church, but do men really get to spend much time with each other? Not really. We're chasing our kids. We're saying, hey, we're serving, then we're gone. So the men's group allowed once a month. We got together at the chapel and we got to hang out. We ate sometimes, prayed for each other, got to know each other. We had small groups where we were accountable with each other. And it's just so important to have that accountability with other men because we all have similar struggles in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
And it's good to talk about it and stay accountable.
Dude, one of my favorite things about all of it, and I know you were there for all of them, so is watching men worship. There's no ladies in the room, just watching, over 80 men actually go in and worship, man. And it wasn't big and crazy. We just have acoustic guitar and we just went.
And Chris Brown is so talented.
Yeah,
isn't
I
he?
love that guy.
Dude's awesome.
Yeah, he did it. He did a tremendous job and went through the process too himself,
And the books that we read, Chop Wood, Carry Water was probably the one that spoke to me the most. And just thinking about, because I can relate to a lot of the whole samurai culture deal, not because I'm a samurai, but because when you learn something from someone special, like The Apprentice did,
yeah,
not everyone is going to be open to hearing that. They don't have your experiences for the last 10 years. He lived there for 10 years and lived that life. So his last lesson in this book, Chop Wood, Carry Water, highly suggest checking it out.
absolutely.
And the last lesson was, you can't go and tell people what you learned here. You don't go and share that. And he's like, what? Why wouldn't I? Isn't that why I'm here? And he goes, no. If they ask you, then that's different. The difference between a pest and a guest is an invitation. And so I have to do that with the back pain stuff. I come across people all the time, even in my family. My back hurts, this and that. And I watch them literally cause their back pain. And if they stop doing 3 or 4 things, I see their pain might come down 50% or even go away. But you know what? Just because my brother is the best heart surgeon in the world does not automatically give him permission to operate on my heart. They have to ask. And that's something I took away, and I'm never going to forget that.
Yeah.
Because you want to help people, but you cannot help people that don't want to be helped.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, man. And it's about conserving your energy as well, man. So the 3 books we read, and I would like to say them on here because encourage people to go get them. Chop Wood, Carry Water, Play the Man by Mark Batterson, and Extreme Ownership, which was the most difficult of the 3 reads. But however, it's eliminate excuses, man, and take some ownership, which is important. And a lot of your stories that you taking ownership of this, that, and all these other things. You could have made a million excuses for things the way that they are and kept them the way that they are. Man, but thank God that you haven't did that. Well, dude, I've enjoyed hanging out, talking, hearing some of your story, letting other people hear it. You want to remind people they can email you at brian@powerrackstrength.com.
Yep.
We'll put it up there too, so they'll have a handle and be able to see it. And man, can you do me a favor? Could you just pray for us as we close it out?
Yes, sir. Lord God, thank you for today. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for Pastor Jason and the ability to put out content like this so we can reach people from years to come. Lord, thank you for being with Florida in hurricane season, being with our staff and our pastors here at Bold City, Lord. Thank you for all your blessings and how good you are to us, even when we don't deserve it. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. Thanks, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Bold City Podcast. To learn more about us, visit us at boldcity.church or download the Bold City Church app. To support this ministry and help us continue to reach people all around the world, visit boldcity.church/give.